On this week's edition of New York Now, we'll unpack the plans to demolish the Central Warehouse in Albany with County Executive Dan McCoy. Then we'll dive into the calls from progressive lawmakers for the legislature to hold a special session before the end of the year to address cuts coming from Washington. I'm Chantal Destra, and this is New York Now.
Today, the Senate majority will pass legislation.
I will fight like hell for you every single day, like I've always done and always will.
Passing these bills on the floor, making it another stand.
Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Chantal Destra. In August, Governor Kathy Hochul announced the official start of the demolition of the Central Warehouse in Albany. This is a building with a deep history of dilapidation in the state's capital city. For years, Albany residents have complained about its condition and have called on both the state and the county to take action. According to the governor's office, the state will contribute about $11 million for the project in an effort to help the community. Now, this is in addition to the $400 million already going to Albany from this year's state budget. At a press conference, the governor underscored what the demolition will mean to the Capital Region community.
We have the majestic Hudson River flowing here, so at night you see the lights sparkling off. It is really quite a stunning view when you come into this fabulous city. And of course, basking in all this beauty, you come around this area and you're like, look what else we have here. And this building, built almost exactly 100 years ago, has deteriorated, declined, and really been a mocking structure to this entire community since 1990. 35 years this community has had to endure this eyesore. And I'm sure actually someone who was a baby back then would be heading toward middle age and realizing, like, this will probably be here until I die. Well, it is not going to be here much longer because we're going to get this done.
But the changes surely won't happen overnight. There will be several phases of the demolition process to address issues with asbestos and avoid interruptions to the Amtrak's train service. Aside from Albany, supporters of the project say that the project also speaks to the state's commitment to economic growth and addressing issues with worn-down infrastructure. In this next segment, we'll sit down with Albany County Executive Dan McCoy to understand the logistics and the history of this project. Here's that interview. Thank you so much for joining us back on the show, County Executive.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this, the opportunity here to talk about the Central Warehouse.
Now, can you help us understand what is happening with the Central Warehouse in Albany? Why is it being demolished?
So it was built in 1927. Obviously, it's 98 years. And in the early 90s, when it got repurposed, it went vacant, more like the 80s, mid-80s. Yeah. But what it was built for was a central warehouse for all the grocery stores in the area. So there's train tracks that go inside the building right off of Amtrak. They would back in, and that's where your food would go into these huge freezers. And then obviously that would go out to the smaller grocery stores, because grocery stores back then weren't the size they are today. Mm-hmm. So that building was built like a bunker house. So it's obviously, it's hard to tear down. It's going to be a problem project. But we had to do something because 97 Frank Crisafulli purchased the property in 2001. Everyone had these great ideas, and they ended up selling the building to the Pine Tree Development. Then go to 2002, the Pine Tree sells it to Joshua, and in 2007, C.W. Montgomery purchased the building. So as you see continue, and then in 2010, there was a fire there. So fire broke out, and that kind of changed things. 2017, a new developer takes over, and where that went. And then 2022, the southern wall collapsed on the train facility on the Amtrak side. This project, I got to say, has been like a curse. It's like the building that doesn't want to be torn down. You know, from the court actions we've gone through, Amtrak's right on the side, and that track services out west, all the way to Buffalo, all through the West Corridor, so it can't be shut down. So we had to work with Amtrak. Senator Schumer was awesome. Senator Gillibrand, because Amtrak could control our time frame, which we weren't, you know, to work around their hours. We have to put sensors on the tracks. We got to make sure there's netting there. So nothing, obviously, for the safety of Amtrak, and I commend them for all that. But they've been a good partner. This, as you know, we finally, with our governor, great Governor Hochul, we got to do a ribbon cutting and a little bit of demolish of an old door that had no asbestos in it to kick it off. And, you know, the state, we're using $3 million from ARPA funds. The county's putting up funds on top of that because the project's getting more expensive. And then the state put up $10 million. So, you know, the next couple months, 4 or 5 months, you're not really going to see much. It's going to be removing of the asbestos, and then after that we get into demolition. And unfortunately, because the timetable in court and the holdup, we're looking at probably into 2027. And people are like, well, why? It's like the last eyesore. You had Tobin's First Prize, right, off of I-90. That was an eyesore for years. We helped take that down. Now you got Central Warehouse, and I joke with my counterpartner, Steve McLaughlin over here in Rensselaer, they get this beautiful view of downtown, the skylight of the city of Albany, the county, and then the Central Warehouse. So this will be something that we can tear down, have a blank canvas to look into the community and say, what can we do for development? Do you just make it into a park? Do you make it into affordable housing, mixed use? You know, there's this canal group that's been meeting for 50 years. They wrote a book. And it was kind of interesting, about bringing the Hudson River in, like Providence, Rhode Island did, going around the state education building, which down on Broadway, I don't think would ever happen, but a smaller version you could probably do and bring the Hudson in a little bit, which will be expensive. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's the end result, right? If you look at King Street in Old Town Alexandria, they thought outside the box after the Central Warehouse and all that went away. So if you want to look at something similar, not like pound for pound, to change it. So we have a blank canvas, maybe bring the water in, affordable housing, shops, a beautiful park in the middle, arena, things for people to do, and you can really make that a destination.
Wow. So why was demolition the answer in terms of addressing the issues with the building instead of, repairing it?
So it was like every developer we went through that I talked about came in there and just the expense, right? They went from one to the other. And in Redburn, we know we did the ribbon cutting on it, right? The mayor did a ribbon cutting before Redburn with the old person that was going to turn it into an art studio and canvas area. That never materialized. And then Redburn. And, he had a great vision, Jeff Buell, great vision to turn around. He's turned around some difficult properties in downtown Albany and has done a good job. So I was like, all right, this will work. And I remember going, I'd rather just use the money and knock it down and have a blank canvas. The plan was solid. Unfortunately, as they got into the building, how much money it was going to cost, how to turn it over, it just became not effective to do this. So then move on to the next stage of its life to tear it down. You have the Erie Canal, that's right there. It's under Modern Press. We tried to purchase that building through the county. We're still trying to work on that property. You have an opportunity like downtown Syracuse did to open up that canal and have a destination for the canal with a beautiful piece of property to go and morph it all into one. So, when we look at this blank canvas of what it can be, and it's hard. How do you sit there and say, I'm going to invest millions of dollars? But you need to invest to get money back. And I'll give a scenario, my MVP arena. When we paid it off and the state was doing the Capitol Center and all that in the walkway, I'm like, I just made my last payment. That was going to be a press conference. Made the last check on it. We're good. We turn around and reinvested $30 million to get it back to the state of art facility. And it has been a win-win situation for an economic driver, from NCAA to the wrestling to this to that, concerts, so high school wrestling. We, obviously we just had, the games here that were here for 3 days. It's a win-win. So this investment with a blank canvas, working with Wanda Willingham, the legislators that lives and represents that district. She's deputy chair of the legislature, who's very passionate about this. We can have a mixed use that it's going to be a gem for people to, as they're driving by in 787, go, hey, I want to go check that place out. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Can you tell us about some of the response that you've received from Albany residents in terms of, you know, their reaction to this project? Are they excited? Are they overwhelmed? How are they feeling?
I think people are going to feel better about this project. There's a big following on different sites, which amazed me. Watch parties. There's a whole generation of people saying, tear this thing down, be done with it. And there's other people saying, I'll believe it when it happens, because, you know, it just keeps getting delayed and pushed back. And that's why I said this project's cursed. And in certain ways, I'm like, I wish I never took this on. But someone had to. And I'm like, we have to change the sky, you know, what our landscape looks like from across the river, but also as people drive by and want to stop. So with this eyesore going, blank canvas, people are so excited. And I think as we go on with time and we get to the demolition part, people are going to be even more excited.
Yeah. So what is that timeline? When will the demolition start?
It started the day the governor and I did the ribbon cutting on this building. The abatement's already going on, and then that, like I said, it's going to take about 5 months, and then hopefully less than 5. Hopefully we don't get to 6. Then you'll see us. Then you'll see more stuff going in there. They'll start prepping it to tear it down. It's going to be done in stages, so we can't blow it up. We can't knock it down because of the track. So you'll see equipment come in. It's not going to be a fun way of seeing it, but you'll see a lot of people there working, a lot of heavy equipment there, and we'll be getting it done.
Yeah. What do you think this project says about the overall appetite by the state to address infrastructure issues in and around Albany County?
I've been county executive 14 years, and at the end, and I'll be going into my 15th year. I've never worked with a governor that has been so laser focused on helping communities. You know, and this is just one prime example, the $400 million investment. And, you know, we had conversations. I had conversations with her staff. I stood at this press conference with the Central Warehouse, and I said, I had no idea the governor was going to put that much money into it. You know, I thought it was going to be 5 or 10 million or a million and say, hey, we did something. Her commitment to not just the state of New York, but to the capital, but especially Albany County being the capital of New York State, shows the $400 million. She's invested $4 billion in the Capital District since being governor. Think about that, $4 billion, and improving. And it's just not here, it's across the state of New York. I was president of NYSAC and New York State Association of Counties, and the people I talked to, from the county managers to the elected officials in different communities, what she is doing is effectively going into communities saying, okay, we're going to put our money into it, but I want tangible results that are going to benefit the community and not waste. And bringing that firm in from New York City to, you know, look at how to spend that money. And we're hoping once this is torn down, because not only did they commit to $10 million, they added a little bit more because, again, the cost of stuff have gone up, and we have too. And at the end of the day, when this is a blank canvas, I think she'll have more money to sit there and say, hey, look, we're going to get behind this in New York State. This governor is unbelievable to work with, hard to keep up with, because I remember going in talking to her about this, and, you know, we're having breakfast and talking about Central Warehouse and St. Rose, and I'm going in there with my laundry list, and Steve Aquario was like, Dan, what happened? I go, what happened? She beat the heck out of me. She wanted to know, I would do this with the College St. Rose. I do this, this, and this, and you should get this done, county executive. And I'm like, I had marching orders before I left. It was supposed to be the other way around. But this right here will highlight the good that you can do in government, working in partnerships, not just with the state of New York, this great Governor Hochul, but working with all of the elected officials and getting something like this done that has a game changer for a community. We talk about housing, we talk about different initiatives, but we need to stop talking about it and we need to do it. And it can't be 6 months from now, it needs to be done today.
And what will be the role of your office in ensuring that the project goes underway smoothly and there aren't any hiccups along the way?
So we're really involved. You know how I said we started Capitalize Albany, so the economic development arm for the county, made it independent to take the politics out of it, to let them go out and help us attract things. Kevin O'Connell and his team have been doing a great job. You know, again, this is one of many, like from Plug Power to this, Regeneron and Menands, College of St. Rose. I could just go on and on. The projects we've done in the town of Colony, throughout the village of Colony, throughout the whole community. You know, I can just continue. We've only been around 4 years, and look what good action we're doing already by trying to make it independent, keep it away from us, and then working with them. So I'm looking forward to this partnership because we completely own it. It was completely turned over to us. So we have our own codes division, everything. So we don't have to go through the Common Council. We don't have to go through the city for any approvals. This is all based on the county approvals and what our vision is, and working with our great chairwoman, Joanne Cunningham, Dennis Feeney, our majority leader, the great legislators there, to sit there and figure out what our next step's going to be, you know, is going to be great. And we're doing that now because with the federal government and the cutbacks and what's going to hit us with SNAP in 2027, there's a rush. And that was the same thing I said about the College of St. Rose. We don't want to rush things through, but there is a rush because eventually we're going to have things like this are going to be difficult decisions because, you know, we need to help people find jobs, tangible jobs, fair wage, and most importantly, put food on their table, pay their rent, help them pay their rent, and everything else. And we're, unfortunately, with the cuts that are coming to New York State, it's going to be tough decisions for the governor. It's going to be tough decisions for the legislature, tougher decisions for us because they like to kick the can down to the county. So we won't be able to do projects like this. So yes, it's imperative we get this done, get it done quick, safely, and come up with a plan with the community of what this can look like.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, County Executive.
Thank you for having me here, and I appreciate this. Get this to your viewers. If you have any ideas what you'd like to make it look like or any suggestions, please go to the Alliance, go to our website. We want your feedback.
Awesome. And we were speaking with Albany County Executive Dan McCoy. And for more information on the plans for the Central Warehouse, you can visit our website. Again, that's at nynow.org. Now turning to another important topic. For months, progressive state lawmakers have been calling on legislative leaders and the executive chamber to hold a special session to address federal cuts. Now, at the end of the summer, that does not seem likely to come to pass. But lawmakers are still urging New Yorkers to call their local representatives and urge them to make their way back to the state capitol. In this next segment, we'll hear from State Senator Jabari Brisport on those calls, communication with leaders, and the plans to address the cuts next session. Here's that conversation. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Senator.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
Now, at the time that we're filming this, summer is just about wrapping up, and at this point, it doesn't appear likely that the legislature will be returning to the Capitol for a special session to address federal cuts. So what is your take on this matter?
I think we absolutely should come back for a special session. I think it is politically weak-willed not to do so. I think not only are a lot of people about to be hurt in New York by the Trump tax cuts, but people are also looking for Democrats to show more teeth and more spine against Trump. And what we're seeing is a failure of leadership to actually reconvene and push back against what he's doing at the federal level.
And can you tell us how the federal cuts to Medicaid and the SNAP program have impacted your own constituents and the ways that you've been approaching your role since those cuts?
We have already heard from health programs, including programs that do addiction recovery programs, that they're expecting, major losses from the cuts. And these have really bad ripple and domino effects. Once you stop doing addiction recovery, those people can't get the services they need. That has ripple effects into the wider community. And that's just one case. We have hospitals that are scared of what the cuts can mean. And it is our duty to make sure that these don't get as bad as they can get.
And what would you say to New Yorkers who are worried about the federal cuts in this moment? What should they be doing to sort of mitigate the challenges that these cuts are bringing?
All New Yorkers should be calling on their state representatives to reconvene for a special session to raise taxes on the rich in order to offset the cuts at the federal level.
And we know that progressive lawmakers seem to have been largely pushing for the legislature to come back for a special session. So can you walk us through the communication that you've received from leadership throughout the summer months about this issue?
We have gotten no communication from leadership about this. It's been falling on deaf ears, which is unfortunate. But I would love to see leadership and the governor reconvene us.
Have you had any communication with the executive chamber about this? And do you think the governor has been receptive to the calls from progressive lawmakers?
I've had no communication with the governor's office, but even in the press, I'm seeing that our budget director is saying that we can't backfill these cuts, that the number is too large. That is not true. New York is an extremely wealthy state with an incredible number of multimillionaires and billionaires, and we absolutely could take care and go further, increasing social programs by taxing New York's wealthiest.
And we know that the governor does have executive authority to address federal cuts. In the summer, she actually directed state agencies to find savings where they could. So do you think that this is an effective way to mitigate the challenges brought on by the federal cuts, or should she be doing more?
There is no way out of this without taxing the rich. And the fact of the matter is the rich in New York got an even larger tax break than they've had before. They've had existing tax breaks that they've been using to increase income inequality. They just got another big tax break from the federal level. We should raise their taxes at the state level to offset the cuts and expand social programs and public infrastructure.
I know that taxing the rich has certainly been a, very pertinent issue at the state capitol for several years. So why do you think that leaders have not been receptive to the calls to, increase taxes on wealthy New Yorkers?
I would say leaders in the Assembly and the Senate have been receptive, and every year in the One House budgets, we do put billions of dollars in new revenue. I think we can go a lot further, but I would say the leaders at the legislative level have been very receptive. The governor has lots of billionaire donors who pick up the phone and yell at her if they hear she might be raising their taxes, and she is fundamentally opposed to raising taxes on the rich because of who her donors are, and that's a sticking issue.
And do you think the state budget that was passed earlier this year did enough to proactively address the possibility of federal cuts at that time?
No, we needed to have gone further.
In what way could you have gone further?
I would start with childcare, just saying with childcare, we should have pushed a lot more for funding for vouchers and also for the workforce. We could have done a lot more to fund the MTA and transportation, as opposed to the governor pushing for the MTA to figure out savings in its program. And internally, schools, our public schools, are looking for conversions to become community schools, but we are not doing a large enough budget to do that.
Can you tell us about the work that you've been doing throughout the summer months to bring awareness to these issues and highlight, these priorities that you just mentioned?
We've been speaking to constituents at events all throughout the district, at whether there are block parties or other community meetings, and we'll be sending out a mailer shortly, letting people know about the need to reconvene at the state level to offset the cuts.
And what has been the response from your constituents to the work that you've been doing?
The people are disgusted by the actions at the federal government to cut social programs in favor of the rich, and extremely receptive to taxing the rich in order to offset the cuts.
And heading into the next legislative session in just a few months here at the state capitol, how are you hoping to address the federal cuts and other pertinent issues?
Well, we're going to start a big tax the rich campaign, similar to the one that was victorious in 2021, where we raised about $4 to $5 billion in new taxes on the rich. We need to swing harder and get a larger number in order to offset these cuts, but the push will be to raise taxes on wealthy individuals, wealthy corporations, in order to raise revenue for New York State to make sure that we don't lose our social safety net and public infrastructure.
Is there anything that you're going to be doing differently next year that you haven't tried before to sort of garner more support for the Tax the Rich campaign?
Yeah, we have new legislators in the state legislature. The composition is different than it was in 2021, so making sure that some of the newer members are on board. We will be looking to expand the labor support. We have a lot of labor unions who are very supportive, and my own UFT, NICE, was a huge heavy hitter in the fight for taxing the rich, and I expect them to keep doing so in the upcoming campaign. And we'll obviously be working with community groups and advocacy groups to expand the boots on the ground and the base building to make sure we have larger numbers to push for a larger win.
And have you started communication with those new legislators that will be coming up to the Capitol this coming January? And what has that looked like, if so?
There's lots of new progressive members that have come in so far. It remains to be seen who fills the Senator Holman Siegel seat. Now that he's going to be the Manhattan Borough president. But the conversations are about to be started.
And from your purview, what should be the strategy for Democrats as you approach the next election cycle? Do you think candidates should focus on the impact of federal cuts to sort of energize voters to the polls, or should they be focusing on something else?
I would say that's a point of disagreement. In the conference, some people want the pain to happen because they believe it'll help Democrats in the midterms. They want the pain of the cuts to happen so that they can point at the Republicans and say, don't vote for them, vote for us. I think it's more important that we do good things for our constituents and that they vote for us because of what we're doing, as opposed to voting against someone because of what they're doing. So I think the strategy should be to aggressively refocus the conversation on how the rich have stolen our democracy from us, that they need to be taxed heavily, and that money reinvested into the wealth of New York, into communities that have built the wealth of New York.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today, Senator, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And we were speaking with State Senator Jabari Brisport. And for more information on the calls for a special session, you can visit our website. Again, that's at nynow.org. You can also subscribe to our newsletter by going to newsletter.nynow.org or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Well, that does it for this edition of New York Now. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.
Funding for New York Now is provided by WNET,